There's a very famous saying that people use that a rising tide lifts all boats. And obvious, the meaning's obvious, right? When the tide goes up, if all the boats are there, they're all going to go up together. But when it comes to business and economics, yeah, that's a lie. I mean, that is not exactly what happens. So, an improving economy doesn't help everyone. It does help the people who are prepared. And let me give you an example. I mean, I'm just going to stretch the metaphor a little bit. So, a rising tide lifts all boats. Well, what if that boat is maybe resting at the bottom of the ocean or on top of a reef, so it looks like it's above the water, but it's sitting on a reef, and you doesn't know it has a hole in the bottom because it's not sinking. But when the tide goes up, the boat goes down because it fills with water and sinks, right? So you've got that pictured. What is it sitting on? It's sitting on a reef. In business terms, it's a subsidy. So if your business is surviving on subsidies, in other words, if you've got holes in your business model and the only thing that is propping you up is that the economy is not doing better, so you can't see how badly off you are, okay, then it just shows us the rising tide doesn't lift all boats. It shows us which boats don't float. So I'm bringing this up because I've read some interesting reports lately about what the economy is going to do, and we've talked about that in some recent podcasts. And we have some concerns in the short term. We've got inflation. However, what we're seeing is that in the long-term macro, we have several more years of, at the very least, modest growth. We don't see an imminent downturn. All the things that are propping up the economy that are poised to break are not going to break in the next 3 to 4 years. In the case of the U.S., with all the tariffs and everything, the fact of the matter is the U.S. is spending just as much money as it always has. And part of economic theory is that if you have money come from government going in to society, that helps prop up the economy. Now, they may be propping it up in different ways, but the fact of the matter, it's going into the economy. We may be waiting for it to trickle down, but the fact is that money is out there and it is doing some work. So here we are. What are we doing at the end of 2025, looking into 2026, thinking, how are we going to run our business? How are things going to be? Well, I'm doing this podcast today, and I titled it about how to, get your cost of labor lower. And I want to tell you, that's a lie. You're not going to get your cost of labor to go lower. I just wanted to suck you in because I'm going to talk about economics. And I know you don't want to hear about economics, but you need to hear about economics. And this is vitally, vitally important. So don't be the company that's sitting on the reef and isn't going to find out until everybody else is doing better. Okay. Be the company that's looking ahead and understanding their position now and getting ahead of the curve. Okay. Strategy is engineering what you want to happen based on what you think will happen. And if you understand that we're going to have modest economic growth over the next 3 to 5 years, how are you going to live your life differently? And what will happen if you do nothing and everybody else does something? You're going to lose out. Keep listening.
Welcome to your weekly dose of uncommon sense, helpful insights, and tough love. I'm your host, Tom Stimson. The Intentional Success Podcast comes to you through the generous support of Mertz Crew.
Mertz Crew helps top AV companies book quality AV freelancers. Your choice, your rates. We handle contracts, insurance, and payments. You save time, cost, and reduce risk. Start today at mertzcrew.com.
Now on to the show.
So we got economists predicting steady but modest growth through at least 2029 in spite of erratic monetary policy. Awesome. Great news. What that means and what we're going to see when you couple this with other facts about, and I'll speak mostly to the U.S. economy, that we have an aging workforce. The cost of living is increasing, and specifically things like healthcare are costing a lot more, which is affecting our workforce. That's going to affect whether you're able to retain quality talent. So where I'm going on all of this is, how are you going to lead into this strong economy so that you are not left behind, swamped on a reef somewhere. So if we have aging workforce, we have inflation, these things are always going to affect the labor market. We have labor scarcity. We have fewer entry-level workers available to the workforce. We have fewer people that want the sub $20 an hour work because they can't do anything with it. They could do piecework at $30 an hour and end up making more money. What are they going to do? How are we going to manage our businesses when our biggest cost, people, is going up? Now, I originally titled this podcast about the cost of talent versus the cost of labor. I want to talk about that for just a moment. Talent is all about quality. When you're putting talent on an event, you're hiring talent for your team, you're looking for quality people. When you're hiring labor, you're looking for quantity. Labor are inputs, right? They're going to move something from A to B. They're going to lift something from C to D, right? They need skills, they need work ethic, they need trainability, but the fact is talent is going to be more valuable. However, many companies add labor to compensate for a lack of talent. And I'll give you the typical example. When you find a company who in this post-pandemic era is inherently not scalable because they only have, a couple of talented people on the team, or maybe only one, they solve every problem. The lack of time for that one person to create processes, systems, put the right people in place, they solve all of that by throwing more labor at things. They end up with 15 people working in their warehouse when they only need 4, because that's the only way they know how to avoid mistakes and get people to stop complaining about how hard the work is, right? So the lack of talent increases the demand for labor. However, the more talent you have, the less labor you actually need, because talent is smarter, right? Now, knowing that we have a talent shortage and we are facing a talent shortage in an economic upturn, the battle for talent is going to be pretty big. Let's face it. And no more so than in our industry, as we move into the scalability model where we need fewer people, but they need to be twice as good. We are dipping into the same pool as everybody else. We are taking our average talent and replacing them with better talent when we can, or at least you should be if you want to remain scalable and continue to grow your business. So that means that the value of talent is going up. However, the value of labor is also going up because there's fewer workers to fill the labor roles and their cost of living is higher. And without getting into the whole politics of minimum wage in the U.S., the minimum wage was set 40 years ago. It has nothing to do with what it costs to live. A high school student couldn't pay for gas to go to work on minimum wage. So minimum wage is not a benchmark. And many of us, particularly in my generation, who remember when the minimum wage went up from $3.65 to $7.25, still think minimum wage is a great deal. And anybody who wants $20 an hour is, what are they thinking? That's a lot of money. Well, compared to what? Well, it is a lot of money compared to 1975, but it is not a lot of money in 2025, and it certainly won't be in 2026. So knowing that we have we can't call it strong or robust, but we still have a growing economy. We have growing demand. Industries are going to continue to do business. We're going to see modest growth in our customers. The question is, are we going to enjoy some of that growth ourselves? So if our customers are growing, hopefully they're spending a little bit more money on events, at least incrementally, if not exponentially. How is that going to affect us? Well, it tells us that we are going to have to pay a lot of attention to pricing strategy. If you're sitting on the reef with the hole in the bottom and all of a sudden the tide rises and everybody else is raising their prices and you're keeping your prices the same because, oh my God, my customers won't pay for that, what you're going to find is that your workforce and your supply chain is more expensive, which means you make lower margins, which means you need to sell more business to make the same amount of money, which inevitably leads to the death spiral because you're taking your average team, you're working them twice as hard to do twice as much revenue for half the profit. It's not sustainable. It's not going to work. And it leads to what, we all know is the death spiral. There's only so long you can survive doing that. So we have to pay attention to our pricing strategy. We have to pay a lot of attention to our margins. We're not looking at what the money that we're going to make is. We're looking at the money that we're going to take in. We're much too revenue focused and not paying enough attention to margins. So pricing strategy and margins go together. So I don't care if you grow revenue over the next 3 years. All I care is that you increase your profit, right? We have to look at productivity, and we have to look at automation. What's automation have to do with us? Well, automation doesn't mean doing shows with fewer people by having people who wear more hats. That is not what we're talking about. There is so much automation you can put into your business in terms of just selling, marketing and sales. So much of this can be automated. Customer service can be automated. You think, oh my God, I don't want a computer or AI involved in my business talking to my customers. Come on, get over it. I love automation. When I order a new pair of glasses from Zenni, I get an email that tells me that the order's been received and is being processed. The optician's looking it over, making sure it's all going to work. They've started the build. They're packaging it. They're going to ship it. That is customer service. I welcome it. I love it when the repairman doesn't say, hey, we're going to be there sometime between noon and 5 p.m. They say, we're going to be there between noon and 2 p.m. And then I will start getting text messages directly from the driver, if not dispatch that says, here's where the driver is. Here's how long they're going to be to your place in 7 minutes. How awesome is this? Automation is your friend. Figure out how to automate more of your business. Your customers need it. They don't want to talk to you. They don't want to have weekly production meetings to go over the same things over and over again. Automation as your friend is going to increase your capacity. And if your people are competent, if your talent is really good, the customer doesn't need to be constantly reinforced and reminded that everything's taken care of because they will trust you, right? So these things are important. Now, all of price strategy, margins, productivity, automation, these are crucial to your business in the next 5 years. Pay attention to those because that's how you can take advantage of the growing economy without overreacting in your business and creating more subsidies that will keep your boat from rising when the tide really does rise. Now, cost of talent versus labor. Here's the thing. I've had a lot of my club members recently throwing the $30 an hour number out at me going, all of a sudden I can't get a good warehouse worker for less than $30 an hour. Well, hello. What does that take to live? That's a $60,000 a year person. What does it take to live in your community? Have you ever looked it up? Right? People say, oh, Southern California is more expensive. Yes, of course it's more expensive, right? You're aware of that. You pay more for talent, right? As a result of that. However, those companies are still successful and they can still make a profit because they're paying attention to their pricing strategy, their margins, and their productivity, right? You pay more for better talent. If you're paying $30 an hour for a warehouse worker, my goodness, I expect them to be really good. I expect them to be able to do a lot of things unsupervised. I expect them to learn very quickly, right? This is important. Now, let's look at the macro of this of your business. As the cost of talent increases, the cost of quality becomes more expensive. You need to focus on retention. If you have those good people, you need to be paying them market rate. And I know this is anathema to some of you that, oh my God, we hired these people for below market rate and they've been here for 20 years and I can't replace them. It would cost me 50% more to replace them. If it's going to cost you 50% more to replace your best person, hello, that's a subsidy. You're not making money. You're gambling. You're gambling that somebody else doesn't walk up and go, dude, you're only making 90 grand. I'll pay you 150 and you have to work less. Boom, they're gone, right? Pay attention to your retention. If you want to keep your good people, this is how you do it. You're going to have to pay them. Balanced companies, scalable business need half as many people to do their day-to-day work, but those people need to be twice as good. So you may have to pay people 50% more than what you've been paying them, but you need half as many people to do it. The net of your cost for talent is going to be lower if you have the right people in place. Now, don't ask me, where do I find good people? The reason you don't know how to find good people is because you have a prejudice in your brain about what people are worth. So when somebody really talented and experienced comes to you and you go, oh, they're overqualified, what you're really saying is they're more than I wanted to spend. You want to hire overqualified people. Overqualified people will take work away from you. They will take it off your plate. They will make things work easy. They will make the job look easy. And then if your reaction is, oh my God, I'm paying them too much money and they're just sitting around doing nothing. Wait a minute. They're making it look easy because they're good. Keep those people. Now, you have to improve your talent pool all around. There's no doubt about this. So everybody else is trying to do the same thing. It's not just money. You've got to create a better work environment. You've got to give them to develop to use their ability to use their talents. You've got to make space for all of that. When you hire people that are better than you at the job that you're trying to hire for. Far too many owners I see hire a controller for their business that knows as much about accounting as they do because they don't want to feel stupid. That's ridiculous. Okay. If you need a controller, hire a really damn good one. Don't hire a bookkeeper and call them a controller. Don't hire a controller and call them a CFO. Okay. If you need a CFO, hire a frickin' CFO, right? Pay dearly for it, but get the advantages that come with it. And if they don't know how to be valuable to you, that says more about you than it does about them. So sometimes the talent we need is to take responsibility away for ourselves for the things that we're not good at and let people who are better at it take care of that. I've worked with more than one owner who's hired a CEO. It doesn't always work because often they don't hire somebody who's better than they are. But there's nothing that says you can't outsource a CEO for your business. The question is, do you know how to take direction? Have you been an employee for a while? You're hiring your own boss. Anyway, I'm getting off track. Automation. We can automate customer service. There's so many things that we can do that will make our lives easier and create the touch points that we're looking for in our systems. Almost by definition, digital marketing, the marketing that I do a lot of, is automated. We put stuff into the pipeline and just things happen. And we have things set up, posts are timed, come out at certain times of the day and the week, blah, 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 blah. There's so much that you can do in your business that is automated if you take the time to look at it. If your team doesn't have the time to look at it, it might not be because they're too busy. It might be because they are not the talent that you need in that role. So at the end of the day, what this all comes down to, don't you love it when people say things like, at the end of the day, what we've learned from these recent economic outlooks is that your leadership, you personally, the person listening to this call, your leadership is going to make or break your business. And if you are not a great leader, if you don't know how to be visionary, if you don't know how to look around the corner, surround yourself with people who do. Or it's okay to sit on the reef, okay? But just be aware that's not going to be the place you want to be when the tide goes up. That's going to put you at the bottom. Been there, done that, never want to do it again. Pay attention, read up on some things, look ahead, and win the talent war. Thanks for listening.
If you liked this episode of the Intentional Success Podcast, please leave a review and don't forget to like and subscribe. This podcast has been brought to you by the helpful folks at Mertz Crew.